G'day everyone, Stephen here. How's it going? It's been a while, I know. I've been doing a lot of night shift. In fact, I've been on night shift now for a few months, and I will be on night shift till probably early January. So I have been nocturnal basically for the last little while, and I'm running on about 6 hours sleep as a general rule, despite my best efforts to sleep during the day. What do you do? It is what it is, and but I'm still happy I've got a job, so you know it's all good. But you've been asking me questions about welding and what's a good welder to get, what are the welders that I have, and so I just thought I'd show you the welders that I have. This little stick welder has been the most recent purchase, and it was an eBay job. That's where I got it from. It says that it's a 220 amp machine, and to be honest, when I first got it, it was not a 220 amp machine. It was actually a 138 amp, and I know that because I took it to work because I was a bit suspect about it. Because you know the welding electrodes you buy, there's usually a maximum and minimum running current written on the packet, and so I set the thing to about 75 amps, which is about right for a 2.4 mil 6013 rod, and it would not run. I couldn't get it to start. It was atrocious, and I was like, okay, that's obviously not 70 amps. So I just kept turning it up, and I cranked it up until it was about 130 amps on the dial. When it got to 130 amps, then the rod suddenly started to run, and at that point I sort of realized that what that machine is saying and what it's doing are two different things. And I actually managed to fix that. It's a 220 amp machine. It's not a bad machine. It just wasn't set up right from factory when I got it. There are. I'll tell you. Why not? Let's turn that off. I'm currently in the middle of a rocket stove build, but I'm stalled because I'm trying to make a copper coil. It's going to be a hot water heater. It's going to be a hot water. Yeah, hot water. Oh, never mind. You know what I mean. For safety's sake, actually, I don't think I'm going to show you this because I don't want to be responsible for someone getting electrocuted because you did something as silly as I did. But basically, I'll tell you what I did, but I'm not going to show you how to do it. But there are two adjustment screws on the board and there. This is an inverter machine, so it hasn't got a great big copper transformer. It's sort of a it's different. It's nice and lightweight, modern technology. But there are two adjustment screws in there that they should set up from factory, and this one just wasn't set up correctly. And basically, one screw adjusts the output of the machine, and the other screw tunes the digital display on the front. To match the output. I haven't actually put the clamp. My mate at work, who's an electrician, he tested it for me the first time, and that's when we established that at max amps this thing was only like 138 amps, which is a far cry from 220. But anyway, but now, just eyeballing it, going from welder feel, you know, from experience, it's about 150 amps now. So I could crank it up more and get it to the 220 amps, which is what the machine's rated to, but I'm hesitant to do that. And a big part of that is the lead that's on this machine. That's just a standard 10 amp plug for the Australian folks who'd recognise it instantly. But we have a little Kempi at work, and it's only a 150 amp machine, and it has a 15 amp plug. So 220 amps running from a 10 amp plug, I'm not an electrician, far from it, but I'm not comfortable with that. On top of that, yeah, it's just the leads on this thing, they're fairly short, and they're fairly short for a reason. This cable's quite light for what it is. And now that it can run at about 150 amps, you know, these get hot. So I don't want it to be 220 amps. I think I'll wear the machine out quicker than what I want. So I've got it tuned down to 150 amps. roughly. I'll actually take it back into work when the electrician's around, and we'll tune it up even better and actually get the display to match what the output is. But anyway, it was a cheap machine. It wasn't set up from the factory correctly, but I was able to overcome that. Just something to be aware of if you are thinking of buying this particular machine. That's the brand. And, you know, it is what it is. You know, paid like 120 bucks for it. It was like the cheapest welder on eBay for the output. But as it turns out, that output wasn't even right anyway. So I can't really give my full endorsement of this machine. It does work. I have bought this little adapter plug so that I can run my I can turn this into a scratch start TIG, which I've done at work or a few times when a little while back one of our usual portable TIG welders had a little unfortunate incident with its cord, and while that was waiting to be repaired, I brought this in and did some repair work with it, and it worked fine. I don't think it's not an industrial machine. It's probably not to be designed to be run every day hard. I think you'd wear it out pretty quick, but it is what it is. It's 120 bucks delivered to my front door, and it's actually a fairly cheap way of getting into welding. And there's probably other ones out there. If you took a chance and bought one of these, it's probably going to be set up right from factory. But if it isn't, yeah, if you're going to do that, just don't, for heaven's sake, you know, just be careful. You know, I took a lot of precautions when I was doing this to, you know, so I didn't die, because really that's what's at stake. If you're messing around with a screwdriver in there while this thing is turned on, you know, you are really taking your life into your own hands at that point. So be careful. That's why I'm not going to show you what I did, because I don't want anyone getting hurt out there, because it really is easy to have accidents as with electricity. You can't see it, you can't smell it, and you won't know about it until it's too late. I was recently electrocuted at work, and yeah, that's where, see that mark? That's where the current exited my body. It came in on this finger and blew out there, and I had a 6-hour stay in hospital, wired for sound, monitoring my heart in case it would just wanted to decide that it would stop on me. So, you know, don't mess with electricity. It was an unfortunate accident at work. It was my own silly fault, sticking my hand somewhere where I shouldn't have. Anyway, and that brings me to this little welder here. It's a Rossi. Again, that's another Chinese machine. Can you see the logo on the side there? Sort of, it's half obstructed. I don't know what the newer Rossis are like, to be honest. This isn't going to be a glowing review of this welder at all. In fact, I can't say I've regretted buying it. It's just it hasn't been the best experience. That's all I can say. Pretty much within the first month of owning it, the gas, the solenoid that releases the gas when you start to weld started to malfunction, and it would sort of turn on late, and that delay became greater and greater and greater, and so and then suddenly the gas would turn on and it wouldn't turn off, and so you just have gas constantly flowing, which is really quite wasteful. So to get around that, I installed a different handpiece with a valve on it. So now I control the gas flow, and I've just bypassed the system in this altogether. Just get rid of it. It's the other side of this machine that's been a bit of a disappointment is that it's also supposed to be a plasma cutter, and it's just never done that well. The handpiece that it came with was garbage. It basically didn't run. I think I can show you. I think I still have it. I threw it out, but basically it must have been a Chinese copy of a Chinese copy of a Chinese copy, and it basically didn't function. So I upgraded the plasma cutter torch to something a little bit more what I was used to. Don't ask me what it was, but it was a definite upgrade, and that helped. But it still struggled to get an arc for the plasma to what would you call it? Initiate. It just wouldn't it was hard to get the arc going, basically. And maybe I had a dirty earth lead, but I'm pretty sure I was careful about that sort of stuff. It would cut when it wanted to, but sometimes you'd be standing there for torch, pulling the thing, and it'd just be air coming out. Come on. You'd be touching the tip to the work, and eventually it'd go. But it didn't. It just wasn't conducive for precise work, and I'm more of a precise kind of guy when it comes to this sort of thing. I'm not the tidiest person in the world. Anyone who watches my channel probably can see that. But when it comes to stuff I build, I like to be precise, and it just wasn't good for that. So I've just I've given up on the plasma cutter side of these things. It is a decent welder though, despite the limitations with the gas, and it has all the functions that you need to really, do a lot of stuff with it. It welds aluminium decently. The duty cycle on this machine is actually quite good. It's actually surprisingly good. I've never overheated this machine. I've never had it thermally overheat and have to stop, because most of the work I do is mild steel or stainless steel. And it at 150 amps, it has 100% duty cycle, so it can just weld all day. Or the torch is what gives out. It gets so hot that you can't hang on to it. And at full noise, at 200 amps, which is what this machine's maximum is, it has a 60% duty cycle. So that's 6 minutes of welding at full noise. 6 minutes is a long time to be running a weld. Like for most general fabrication, that's actually that's pretty good. Would I buy this machine again? I don't know. If someone gave one to me, I would accept it. But would I buy another one? I think I'd be going to a Lincoln or an Everlast or something that's a reputable brand. Not because this one hasn't worked. It's worked actually quite well. It's got a really smooth arc, and I like it. I like the arc characteristics. It's just that when stuff breaks on this, I'm really not sure where to go to get spare parts. Like, that's the thing with Chinese stuff, is they're not designed to be repaired. That's just not the mentality over there. I have a friend who, I don't know how much of a story I can tell you, but he was looking into importing Chinese trucks. He sold farm equipment, and very, very good, reputable farm equipment, and so he just wanted to, they were already selling Japanese trucks, and he'd heard about these Chinese trucks, and he looked into it. And the first question he asked the Chinese guy was, what about spare parts? And the guy looked at him and laughed, and he said, spare parts? What are you talking about? Like, when they break, we throw away and we get another one. Like, that's the mentality over there, as a general rule. That's very general, but that's been my experience as well, is that they're not geared that way. It's like, no, you make the whole thing, when you wear it out, you throw it out and you get another one. That's just how it goes, and it's good turnover, and we produce more stuff and they make more money and all that good stuff. So would I get another one of these to say all that? And no, I probably wouldn't. But there are some Chinese welders that I would consider and am considering, because this won't last forever. It's coming on its 5th birthday. Actually, it's been with me for 5 years, and so it's still going after 5 years of pretty consistent use. It's still going good. I would definitely consider a Unitig. If you're serious out there, if you're looking to getting into TIG welding, I can only comment on welders that I've had personal experience with, and as far as a cheaper machine goes, I've had good experiences with Unitig. They're not the cheapest welder out there, but you can get spare parts for them. There is support here in Australia, at least. And so that's stuff that you need to think about, spare parts. Like, and it's a bit of an outlay, but you can get like a decent DC only TIG welder with a high frequency start, with pulse. It's got everything you want. And a mate of mine's got one of the older razors. And he was a pipe welder and doing a lot of ammonia work in refrigeration plants, and he caned his Unitig for a year. I mean, like, he just used it max out, just walking the cup, all day, you know, not all day, but, you know, but doing big hours with this thing. He caned it, and it just took it, and it's still going. He's had this machine now. He's had this machine now for probably coming on five years, and it's still going. He now works where I work and brings it in occasionally because it's just a really handy portable machine, and the pulse functions and all of the little bells and whistles that it has is really quite useful. It's much better than a scratch start. And so if you're really keen on learning how to TIG weld, you know, yes, you can convert a little stick welder like this one to do TIG. You know, to convert this one to TIG, I mean, I could have bought its own dedicated lead, but I got this adapter plug, so I can now make this lead fit that machine by putting this adapter on. You know, I think it was like 30 bucks. So for 30 bucks, I've got a very portable little scratch start TIG, which is really quite useful. You know, at work I still do a lot of scratch start TIG welding, particularly because the big 3-phase uni TIG that we run at work, big 300 amp monster, you know, it's not the most portable thing in the world. It's not too bad. I've made a nice cart for it, but it's not the most portable thing in the world. And there's still a place for a scratch start, but high frequency start is what you want. And for those who are wondering what on earth I'm talking about when I say high frequency start, is that basically high frequency start means that you don't have to touch the tungsten off onto your workpiece to initiate the arc. Scratch starts are just like a stick welder. You have to scratch, as the name would imply, against the workpiece, or lift TIG is when you touch the tungsten, and that initiates the gas, and then you lift up, and then the arc starts that way. So, you know, there are advantages and disadvantages to, you know, lift arc is good if you're welding on something that has electrical stuff inside of it. The high frequency start can damage electrical components, so having the option for a lift arc is not a bad thing for a scratch start. You're less likely to blow stuff up that's sort of sensitive, and where I work there's a lot of sensitive electrical stuff, so that's predominantly why we still run scratch starts where we work mostly. But when we can get away with it, we go high frequency start every single time, because it's just so much quicker, and you're not wrecking at tungstens as much. But you do get good at it after a while, and it's actually I sort of enjoy the challenge of scratch start. If you know, from time to time. So these are my welders. These are my current welders anyway. I mean, I've owned others, and I've given some away, and I've had others stolen and stuff. Oh, I do have I've got a little a Lincoln 180C MIG welder under there. It's just set up for gasless currently. You've seen that in my rocket stove pizza oven build. That's what I build that with. And it's, you know, gasless MIG, that's another option. Gasless MIG has its advantages and disadvantages. I would have to say that for tacking up a work, it is very convenient to be able to pull a trigger and be able to just lay metal down exactly where you need it, where you want it, as opposed to a stick welder where you'll scratch and the stick might get stuck on the workpiece, and that pulls stuff apart, and it's sort of annoying. So, you know, there is some convenience to a gasless MIG, but it's not. I wouldn't recommend starting with a gasless MIG, because for most cases, for people I've talked to, they don't progress past it. They just get used to it. They get lazy, and not everyone, but you know, that seems to be what happens. If you start with a stick welder and you can learn the basics on that, it's the cheapest way to get into welding, and it's the best way to learn all the fundamentals. Well, I've talked long enough, and I should just mention one other thing, in that the other thing that you need to consider when you're purchasing in your purchases and budgeting is a reasonable welding helmet. Now this is a WIA auto darkening helmet, and this is a budget helmet. Like it's over $100, which is still budget. Like compared to my Viking here, like that's an expensive helmet. And I use that for my fine TIG work at work. But for getting into stuff, this isn't a bad way to go. It's sensitive enough. If you set the delay up really high, that's the trick with these not so sensitive TIG welding helmets for TIG welding, auto darkening helmets, is set your delay right up. Because what happens is that the sensors on this aren't sometimes strong enough or sensitive enough to pick up consistently the arc of a TIG welder. And so it thinks you're not welding while you're still welding, and then it flashes you. And you get, but usually only for a second, but that second is long enough to have a fairly decent white spot burnt into your eyes. And that's not fun at all. But this is probably the best budget helmet that I've ever used for TIG welding, is this WIA. WIA, I believe, is an Australian company, I believe. I'll have to confirm that. Not that this is an Australian-made helmet. I'm positive this will be made in China, like everything is. Anyway, who knows where it's made? Just say that because most things are now made in China. So that's the other thing you need to factor in. Budgeting is a helmet. You don't have to go auto darkening. You can go old school, what we call a Ned Kelly helmet. It's just the old flip down. They're good. Maybe not the easiest to start with, particularly when you're sort of learning to get your bearings, and and you're trying to focus on where you're going to strike the arc, and you flip down that little lens, and suddenly, you've lost all sense of bearing. It's not as big a deal once you're used to it. But I'd have to say, for learning, it's a much easier learning curve if you use an auto darkening helmet, and it's something that you want to factor in. You can skimp on your welder to some degree. You can skimp on the you can save money there to begin with, but really I wouldn't go anything less quality than this helmet here. That's my personal recommendation. I've really had nothing but good experience with this particular helmet. And like this. That's about it, guys. Apart from a decent pair of gloves and some decent boots with like some Spatter Guards. Oh gee, I can tell you a funny story about these Spatter Guards. I was getting mocked at work because I was wearing Spatter Guards. It was a stinking hot summer, and you just didn't feel like getting around, wearing long pants and a long sleeve shirt in the workshop. And so guys were wearing shorts, and all the work that you were doing was up high on a bench, and so it's not like your legs were getting exposed to the harmful UV and infrared that a welder puts off. But they were mocking me. Oh, look like crocodile, look like Steve Irwin with those things on, and I'm just like, whatever. And then the main guy that was giving me all the hassle and trouble about it, got a big blob of slag, fell down into his boot, and he ran across the room and dumped his feet in the. We had a 44-gallon drum cut in half that was always full of water next to the linisher, so that you could sort of cool your work as you were working on it. He basically dumped his whole leg straight into that to put put it out. And the next day he was wearing spats too, the Spatter Guards. So just to be aware, that's not a bad. If I can get my leg up there, I'm not as flexible as I used to be. At the end of the day, these aren't a bad investment. That'll just wear jeans. Yeah, and decent footwear. Normally I don't recommend laces for welding. I've burnt through plenty of laces because like the spatter will fall on your boot and burn through your laces, and all of a sudden your boots are all floppy because you've burnt through the laces. So I have totally wasted enough of your time now. Thank you for watching. I hope this answered some of your questions. Please leave comments if you want to know anything more about TIG welding. If some of the techniques and some of the techniques that I use, just ask away. I just want to. I want to know that you're interested in it before I invest time into, making that video. Because to be quite honest, there's so many really good TIG welding videos out there already. I don't see the need to make another one. Like I'm a good welder, but I'm by no means the best welder out there. And but if you like what I do, and you want to hear how I do it, then let me know, and I'll make a TIG welding video for you. Some basics, just some, it all comes down to time in the helmet. If you want to learn how to weld, you know, if you don't want to buy one, you know someone who's got a welder that's willing to lend it to you, get some time in the helmet and watch some videos. I really recommend Jody over at weldingtipsandtricks.com. That guy has taught me more about welding than anyone out there. So Jody, if you ever watch this, thank you, mate. Thanks really a lot. You've upped my game no end. And it's not that the guys at TAFE in Australia didn't do a good job. It's just you've only got so much time as a TAFE teacher. I really appreciate that, to share that knowledge around 30 guys, you know, 30 new people learning how to weld. It's hard to spend that quality one-on-one time, and you get that with Jody, you know, and he puts out content all the time, and it's a channel worth supporting in my opinion. Thank you again, and I'll catch you later.